All right, let's get it. You're watching Philadelphia 76ers Now by Chat Sports. I'm Chase Sr. Hope everybody out there had a great weekend and your weeks are off to a great start. This week, if you're an NBA fan, going to be a fun one. You have the draft on Thursday and Wednesday, as a matter of fact, and then free agency getting underway on Sunday. And on today's show, loaded one. New updates on Paul George. Daryl Morey's ideal free agency targets, and is there a competition for Kyle Lowry? Speaking of free agency getting underway on Sunday, if you're excited to see who Philadelphia can sign with all of this cap space, I want you to hit that thumbs up icon and like the video. And for the first time, that's why I was confused a little while ago, the NBA draft, 2 nights, Wednesday and Thursday, will be live for both of those nights, both rounds right here on 76ers Now. Don't forget to hit that sub button. Story number 1, the latest on Paul George. After Shams Charania had reported that the 76ers' interest in PG had waned, several reporters, including Shams himself, clarified the situation, and Shams kind of walked back on his reporting. First, Shams was on the Pat McAfee show, and he gave another update on PG-13. And here's what he had to say. The signal that they're giving teams around the league is that they are open for business. They feel like over the next week or so, they can be aggressive, and if there's an option that presents itself, they can move on and not have to wait on Paul George in free agency. And Brian Windhorst had some interesting things to say to start the week, that Paul George could get traded as early as this weekend, and we'll talk about that. And that could really set things up for free agency as well. Of course, that would have to be a sign-and trade. Keith Pompey on the Paul George front. Clippers swingman Paul George had been listed as the Sixers' top free agent target for some time before Thursday's report about their interest waning, but that doesn't make sense considering the 9-time All-Star fits with Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey and how long the Sixers coveted him. He has until June 29th to opt into his $48.8 million contract for next year, or to become an unrestricted free agent. The Clippers can offer him a 4-year, $221 million deal. However, they haven't been willing to offer more than the 3 years, $152.3 that they gave Kawhi Leonard. Lastly, the problem is George wants a 4-year deal. The Sixers and other squads can offer 4 years and around $212 million. We know that Philadelphia is very well equipped. We know that they are well positioned. Did James Harden get in the ear of Paul George, convincing him not to go to Philadelphia? Does Paul George realize that he can make a lot of money, compete for a title, and fit in well with Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey? It is peak NBA rumor season, and who knows what the hell is going to happen. Here's Marc Stein's spin. I am struggling to pinpoint third-party teams that put much stock in the recent leakage, suggesting that the 76ers have cooled on the idea of pursuing it. Only the Sixers know their true intentions, but let's just say there will be a healthy bit of skepticism league-wide about the Sixers bowing out completely until PG-13 has either come to terms with the Clippers or landed somewhere other than Philadelphia. So you have all these NBA insiders and all of these NBA reporters passing along something different on the Paul George front. Could George opt into his player option and then get traded? That's also an avenue that could take place here. He could also opt into that player option, play under that player option, or agree to a long-term extension with the Clippers. And maybe that cause some concern for Philadelphia. One option for George is a sign and trade with the Clippers. Keith Pompey saying this, to a destination that he desires, Los Angeles, which does not have a first-round pick, would most likely ask for one in a package deal. The Sixers could include the number 16 pick and even consider adding Tobias Harris via a sign and trade as part of a package. LA has some sort of interest in Harris, a soon-to-be free agent and former Clipper, according to a league source. Now, Tobias Harris, before getting dealt to Philadelphia during the 2018-19 season, under Doc Rivers, was playing at an all-star level. He was really, really good that year. And I think that he can get back to those types of numbers. I'm just not sure if Tobias Harris is a good stats, bad team guy, or if he can become that player and be that player once again on a team that is legitimate with other good complementary pieces. Does he just need the basketball to feel a little bit more comfortable? But could you imagine trading away Tobias Harris for the services of Paul George? How much of a win would that be for Philadelphia? You have to include that 16th overall pick, but the upgrade there from Tobias Harris to Paul George is drastic. PG at the end of the day, and we know that this time period is all about leverage, could be trying to take back some leverage, keeping an eye on that June 29th deadline. Now here's what Brian Windhorst had to say about Paul George. I told you, today's show was loaded. He could opt in and get traded by this weekend. That is something that is going to come to a head in the next day or two. So this week, getting pretty spicy here, Chip. Your thoughts on all of this and where you think Philadelphia could go?
Yeah, stuff's moving very fast with this whole Paul George situation. They didn't want him. Now they're saying that he's not off their radar entirely. Here's what I think, and my read on the situation of what I think happened here. The Sixers probably thought, okay, we can offer Paul George a contract once free agency opens. There won't be much competition because not a lot of teams have open cap space. We know the Clippers don't want to give him that long-term deal. But then what happened, because Paul George really didn't have too much leverage in the situation, but now what he can do, and what I think the Sixers are scared of, is that Paul George can opt into the last year of his deal, which he was not expected to do, but he can opt in and then give himself control over where he plays next year. Yeah. There'll be more options if he's traded, whereas opposed to if he signs, it's really just like the Clippers, the Sixers, or the Magic are the only teams that can really sign him that have cap space that are contending. But if he opts in, he can request a trade pretty much anywhere he wants. And even if he does want to go to Philly, if he opts in and gets traded to Philadelphia, as opposed to just signing with Philadelphia, they would maintain his bird rights, which would actually allow him to get a little bit more of a salary increase every year if he were to extend with Philly. It's only like another $12 million in the year in total, but hey, it's still more money for Paul George. So I think, again, what probably happened, Sixers were worried that he's going to opt into his deal, which means there's more options he can go to. So then there was a report from Shams that, okay, the Sixers are going to be looking this week to make a move before Paul George decides on his player option. Therefore, they're not waiting and risking missing out on some other potential pieces this week during the draft. So I don't think they're completely disinterested, just want to keep their options open, make sure they can do what's best for the squad.
Great insight there from Big Dip Chip. The bird right's obviously important for the player and obviously the team too when trying to negotiate a trade, trying to negotiate a contract, all of those things, of course, at play. Where will Paul George play next year? That is the big question here. And when you consider Paul George, the name, the game, obviously he's one of the marquee names going into this free agency period. Coming up next here, story number one, complete. Daryl Morey's ideal free agent targets. We're going to get to that. And is there a competition for Kyle Lowry? 76ers draft hats continue to be on sale thanks to our friends at Fanatics, by the way. And the draft, as I noted, Wednesday and Thursday. If the Sixers hold on to that 16th pick, whoever takes the stage or gets drafted by Philadelphia, going to be rocking this hat. Get yours today. Chatsports.com/76ers draft hats. We'll attach that link to the pinned comment of today's video, and it's also in the show notes right now. So Marc Stein, NBA insider, who we already talked about a few minutes ago, said that Daryl Morey is focused on one thing heading into free agency. He should just sign me because I can hit the triple. Here's what Marc Stein had to say about Daryl Morey's plans. Another variable when Brandon Ingram, Jimmy Butler, or DeMar DeRozan is mentioned as a potential Sixer, none of them shoot threes with the sort of consistency and or volume that Sixers president of basketball operations, Daryl Morey, is believed to be seeking. What did Daryl Morey say after the season came to a close? He wanted a wing that could defend and score, and he believes that that player fits really nicely on the current construction of the Sixers roster. So I agree. When you think about the likes of a DeMar DeRozan, who doesn't really take any threes at all, a move like that doesn't make sense, nor would I like it. I do still think that Jimmy Butler would be a great move if you're trying to chase a championship, which is obviously the goal over the next couple of years. I still think that Jimmy has some gas and petrol left in the tank. Brandon Ingram, on the other hand, soft-spoken, soft demeanor. Would he fit well in this city? Now, as for players who do shoot threes in free agency, there's different varieties here. Klay Thompson last year, 9 3-point attempts per night. It's going to be difficult to find a player who chucks up more threes than that. Converted on nearly 39% of those attempts. Gary Trent Jr., 39% on 6.5 3-point attempts. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, 4 3-point attempts, but connected on nearly 41% of those shots. And then there's Malik Beasley, nearly 7 3-point attempts per night, 41+% from long range. Those are free agent targets. Trade targets, Mikal Bridges, 37% on 7 threes a game. Lauri Markkanen, almost 40%, 8 threes a game. Malcolm Brogdon, 41+ on 5+ 3-point attempts. Bogdan Bogdanovic, 37% on 8 3-point attempts. So if Daryl Morey is looking to upgrade this roster, and it's indeed true that he wants a chucker, there are free agents, there are trade targets here, Chip, who we could go after.
Yeah, look, I'm very interested to see how far, this goes and how good is Stein's intel. And with Daryl Morey, will he really be willing to pass on someone like a Jimmy, like a Brandon Ingram, just because they don't fit the archetype that he's supposedly looking for? I will say this as well. There's no doubt that for the role players, I'm sure he wants to find guys that can chuck up threes and hit them at a good rate. Maybe, if there's a star player like a Jimmy becomes available, he'd be willing to pass on that. I will say this. Again, if this report is true and this is Daryl Morey's number one priority, keep an eye on Buddy Hield. We haven't talked about him too much, and there hasn't really been too much reporting saying that the Sixers are very interested in bringing him back. Obviously, after a great start for Philly, he really fell off, especially in the playoffs outside of that one game against New York.
Yep.
But if Daryl Morey really does want these efficient and high-volume three-point shooters, you're not going to find much of a better one out there than Buddy Hield. Now, apparently the Sixers would like to bring back Oubre, Kyle Lowry, who we'll get to in a second, and Nick Batum. So Hield hasn't really been mentioned too much, but he fits that archetype. His whole career, he's been that guy, and although he struggled with Philly at times, there's not, again, many better options when it comes to shooting and hitting the three than Buddy Hield. So keep an eye on him. Sixers do have his bird rights because they traded for him, so they will be able to go over the cap if necessary to be able to sign him. So just another name to keep in mind when we're talking about some internal free agency here for the Philadelphia 76ers.
I just go back to what Daryl Morey had said. It's like we didn't think that Buddy Hield fit in as well as we thought he was going to when we traded for him once Joel Embiid got back. It was weird, but then Game 6, he caught fire. And I liked how he caught fire in that game because he had been benched against the Knicks. His confidence was down, but what the shooters do, they come out chucking, they come out shooting with that short mindset. If you're looking to get a player who can shoot threes at a lower value and an affordable price tag, Buddy Hield could fit that. Lastly, will the Sixers have competition for Kyle Lowry? I saw a couple of things over the weekend that he's widely expected to come back to Philadelphia. He'd like to stay in his hometown. Here's what Marc Stein had to say. I've been hearing for weeks now that the Clippers, even though Russell Westbrook possesses a $4 million player option for next year, have interest in both Chris Paul and Kyle Lowry to supply backcourt depth. Lowry, though, is a Philadelphia native who is widely expected to re-sign with the 76ers. Last year, loved what he brought to the table. Experience, toughness, savvy veteran, leadership. When things went awry in game, he could slow things down and slow the heartbeat of this club. 8 points per game, 4.5 assists, 44.5% from the floor, 40% from three. Those numbers for a backup point guard who, by the way, can also play off ball, really good. He's going to play good defense. He's going to set charges. He's going to produce turnovers. I'd like to see the Sixers keep Kyle Lowry home. There is no reason for him to finish his career anywhere else. Nick Nurse clearly likes him. He has a spot in this rotation. We clearly see that he has game left. He can be a productive member of this squad, and he's not going to cost all that much money. So if you're Kyle Lowry, you might try to chase a bag, but are you trying to chase wins, chase a good salary, and stay home to finish out your career? You could do it with Philadelphia, and I'd like to see it. What's one move you want to see Daryl Morey make? We round out with that. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, we're going to be live both nights of the NBA draft right here on 76ers Now. Our main Chat Sports YouTube channel will also be live Wednesday, Thursday for both rounds of the draft. A lot of people going to tune into that program. You can check that out as well. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow.